Hello there, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to a very special presentation of We Live Hockey and Geeks Who Like Sports. I'm Ray Carsillo, and today I'm going to be taking you through the new expansion franchise mode in NHL 20. The mode itself isn't new, but it's had a lot of upgrades and additions made to it. So, of course, you always start off, as you can see here, with choosing to make a 30-second team. You can do Classic, where it's just you do the current NHL as it is right now with 31 teams, and you pick your favorite team. But for this sake, we're going to actually create the new 30-second Seattle franchise that'll be coming into the league next season in order to give an idea of what the league might look like. Now, of course, this isn't going to be called Seattle NHL 32. We're going to get into the details and the nitty-gritty. I'm not going to show everything here because there are a lot of different aspects to the mode, but we are going to call them the Seattle Metropolitans, which, of course, was the name of the Seattle hockey team, Pacific Coast Hockey League team, from 1970. I believe it was 1915. They won the Stanley Cup in 1917. I think they went until they were around for about a decade, like 1915, 1925. Those aren't exact years, but before the NHL was around, there was a Seattle team. They were called the Seattle Metropolitans. They did win a Stanley Cup way back in the day. Of course, it's not recognized by the NHL because that came a few years later. But we're going to basically recreate the Seattle Metropolitans. Now, there were a few other options. There was the Seattle Salmon that I was looking at that I know a lot of folks were like, ugh. There was also the Seattle Totems, which, of course, is another thing that's been thrown around in terms of what this 30-second team will be named. But to avoid cultural appropriation and to avoid, and also there was no fish logo. I was gonna actually call them the Seattle Salmon, but there is no fish logo, unfortunately, of all the logos. So instead, decided to go with the Seattle Metropolitans. And what's nice about this is that their logo back in, oh goodness, the early 1920s, was just the letter S. So we're actually going to go in and we're going to give them a collegiate, bold-faced font letter S, and we're going to turn it into their colors. Their colors were actually red, white, and green back then, now 100 years ago. And so that's what we're going to do with our Seattle franchise. So we're going to basically try and make it as very much a recreation of that team from 100 years ago, playing a modern game. So, you go in, you have your color selectors, you have your, again, all these different fonts. You have a lot of different logos. Hopefully more will be coming down the line at some point. Again, very disappointing that they have salmon as a choice to call them, like as in terms of the play-by-play name, but they don't actually have a fish, like a true fish, as the logo. So we have our logo, and then we get into the uniforms. Again, I sped up this process. I gave them 3 different logos. You see there, there's a lighthouse, a factory, and then, of course, their primary logo, which is the S. Again, red is their primary color, just like it was 100 years ago with a green and white outline. Very much kept them the same. Something I would have liked in this mode is that you can go step by step and hit apply team colors, but I would have loved to have just had at the top, like here in this main menu when you're making your skater equipment and your character, to just hit triangle for everything and just completely the entire thing, make it for everything. So instead of having to go step by going into the 5 different menus, you could have just done it just one big menu. Be like, hey, I got my colors, apply it, and then tweak from there as necessary. If you don't like, oh, that's too much red, or oh, that's too much green, or whatever. Instead of going piece by piece like we kind of had to here. But yeah, so we have our team now. We have our Seattle Metropolitans, the Mets. I'm not a Mets fan, but for this sake, we will. And then, of course, you go into, you have your away team, you have your away colors and whatnot. You get into the away uniform, again, more white than anything else. And then we get into an alternate uniform. The alternate uniform is because Seattle's colors typically are blue and green. We figured the alternate jersey would be a blue jersey, which is a lot of fun. So we get into that. We do that with the expansion franchise, which is great. And then we get into arena mode. We get to mess around with our arena, right? We choose our arena. We choose the base architecture, as it were, and then you get into making some goal horns, having some fun with that. You can do a lot with the different audio. But yeah, so you can customize your goal horns. You can get it down. You can do layers. You can actually do up to like 3 different layers and do blasts and all different sorts of stuff, and that's a lot of fun. And then, of course, you get into your mascot. This is all stuff that's been around, of course, in the previous years of NHL. We're just kind of showing off again what we're doing for this particular Seattle franchise, because this is the franchise we're going to be playing with for the entire year. At least in this offline mode. And then we're gonna go kind of with like a bird, because I guess a bird it makes sense for the Seattle area. But there's all different kinds of heads and things like that, which is a lot of fun. And then of course apply team color. You apply the team colors because you have to, and that looks kind of monstrous. So we're gonna make some further tweaks here and kind of make our bird look a little bit better, but still pretty frightening. And then we get into the expansion draft. Now, according to speed this up, I've basically already selected everybody from my team in the expansion draft. I'll just go through it here. I'll just scroll so you see everybody that I picked up from each franchise. Again, you'll see like Derek Brassard on the Avalanche, but Derek Brassard's not on the Avalanche. It's a lot of the rosters. Again, this is before the day one patch. This is before a lot of the servers have been turned on. So a lot of the rosters are close to updated, but not completely updated. So there's a little stuff that, a few things that are still a little dated here. But it was great. I picked up Ryan McDonough, of course, former Ranger. I'm a big Rangers fan. So, of course, I built from the goalie outward. I got Lenier, whatever his name is, from the Islanders. He had a great year last year. Building on top of that momentum, I picked him up as my goalie. He's an 86 in the game, which is a good number for a goalie. But then I built outwards. Guys like Ryan McDonough there as one of my top defensemen was and Ekholm from Nashville as my top pair. It was really good. Then you get into the draft. Had the second overall pick after a draft lottery, and just like my New York Rangers, after some deliberation, I almost went with Zachary Baker, but I took Capo Kakko from Finland. He's the guy, and you'll see this in another later video when we get into the gameplay. It was actually a great choice on my part because he ends up playing. He plays fantastic. He's one of these guys. A top 5 player in the draft can basically go right into the NHL, can basically start at the NHL level. And that was very, very evident in the gameplay that I'll show later on. After that, one of the things is we updated our trading block, and this is a new feature in the game. Is that like as soon as you update your trading block, if people are interested, you're gonna start getting offers. So the St. Louis Blues offered us a 3rd round pick, a 4th round pick, and a minor leaguer for Hamonic, right? And I'm like, yeah, no, you know what? I kind of like him. I think he's gonna be one of my top 4 guys. And then, of course, here the first time you do everything, the game goes through all this. So I'm going to start looking around, seeing what defenseman I might want to give up instead. And Andy Green. I hate the Devils. Andy Green has a huge salary. We'll see if St. Louis will bite on him. We're going to basically throw in a draft pick back to kind of sweeten the deal because we get it. It's a little bit more money. He's not quite as good as Hamonic was. We're gonna see if the Blues will bite at this offer and see, and if and they rejected it, which kind of makes sense because it's not what they were really looking for. But we're gonna go for another trade now. I really want to get rid of Andy Green. I have a lot of defensive depth. I need a second line forward a lot. And here's another good one with Boston, right? This is actually pretty even on the trade value. I'm taking on more of a salary as well as more years. They're getting Andy Green, whose contract's expiring. Boston also, it helps them get a little closer into the salary cap. And this is something that's frustrating me for many, many years in NHL, which is you don't know how close you really are in terms of getting a team to bite for your trade and overselling. And it seems like every time you would propose a trade, they would turn it down. And here, the trade is still rejected. Still, it's so frustrating still to be a GM in franchise mode because it just still doesn't seem to make any sense. I don't get it. To me, on paper, that's a move that makes sense. From the information the computer is giving you, that trade should have went through. Player for player, I take on more salary. That's it. Anyway, here's another new feature in the game where, of course, is that it's if you'll see here on the right side, is that you can get bonuses or detriments to how a line fits in with the coach's scheme, as well as a line does overall with their own chemistry. So my fourth line is actually getting a +1 overall because they fit in very well together and they fit in with the coach's scheme. Same thing with the defense. You see Eric Gustafsson and Jake Muzzin. They pair well together, as does Ryan McDonough and Ekholm. They get +1s overall. Hamonic and Johnson, not great. So they're kind of just even. They're not incompatible, but they're not completely compatible. And this is kind of what happens, especially with an expansion draft. You're kind of just trying to get the best players you can. I honestly put together a pretty good team, if I do say so myself. My overalls are very competitive with everybody else in the league. I do have some depth. I have some guys who are scratched right now. Obviously, here's Leonard, Robin Leonard, and Hutton, who are my two goalies. I'm going to go to defense, though, or I'm going to go back to offense. You're going to see I'm going to try and help with the overall, and you can see the different guys. I got Colin Wilson, Adam Lowry, Jesper Fast, I got from the Rangers. Spezza is actually doing really good for me so far. A few games in the season. We'll show some more gameplay later. But bench, I got Patrick Maroon and Dan Girardi, who I signed in free agency. Girardi, again, another one of those guys near and dear to my heart because of my being a Ranger fan and all his years as a New York Ranger. I'm going to bench Jack Johnson and put in Dan Girardi and see if that doesn't help some of the compatibility. It doesn't, but I'm going to leave him in anyway because, again, I'm a Dan Girardi fan. So, even though he isn't what he once was, I'm still a fan. Same thing, I'm going to try and do the same thing now. We're going to put Jesper Fast on the bench. Patrick Maroon is just a much better player. We're going to try and do the same thing with him, put Maroon in and see if that helps the third line overall. It doesn't, but again, better player overall. We're going to put him in. Kind of bothersome also that Kakko is still all question marks, even though we've drafted him at this point. He's signed a contract. He's my third line starting right winger. But speaking of Kakko, the coach, Michael Petit, reaches out and asks me, as the GM, what do we want to do with him? What's the plan? And I kind of take a middle-of-the-road approach here, saying we'll do a 9-game trial, even though the plan is he's going to play the whole year, unless he gets hurt. But to make the coach happy, because the coach seems to... This is kind of what the coach wants, which is to have him more on a trial basis. He doesn't want to burn the kid out. And so we agree. The GM and the coach come to an agreement. The coach's morale gets a gain. That's good for the coach. That's good for the team overall. That means the guys who fall in line with the coaching scheme will also get a slight boost. And we get another trade offer. This time, Jack Johnson and 2 draft picks for 2 higher draft picks from the Senators. Still mad at this system because that's a stupid trade offer. I don't need draft picks. I'm going to win the Stanley Cup, or at least get there, just like the Vegas Knights did a couple of years ago. Stupid game. Bad NHL. Not understanding that I'm trying to build a winner right now. I don't need draft picks. I'm not building for the future. Another thing, not new, but I've been around a revamped scouting system. As you can see, again, I'm not building for the future. I'm building for now. So I'm going to tell Terry Larson that I want you to look at players in the late first round, because we're going to have a late first round draft pick because we're going to make the playoffs, because that's what we're going to do. Seattle hockey is going to be a force to be reckoned with. So that's what I do with him, and kind of just keep moving forward with that. So we're in the preseason now. We've now simmed up to the regular season. Everybody stayed healthy in the preseason, thank goodness. This is another old running thing in franchise, which is upgrading and maintaining your arena. The bathrooms are crap, literally and figuratively. So we're going to put a repair in progress there. That should happen. So a few days in, a little after the home opener. Now, we've got a couple of games into the season. You can see I'm already 3-0-0. We're going to go... We want to take a look at our coaching staff, see if there's any way... to see if there's... So there's been a few injuries, so you see a couple of guys who are different here. Dickinson, who was in the minors, got called up. McCoshin, same thing. to fill in for some injuries. But what we're going to look at here is to see if, now that we got these guys in the lineup, is to see how they go with our coach and with our coaching scheme. The satisfaction with the coach is actually very high. The coach is actually very happy. Even though Mascot doesn't fit with the coach's scheme, he's played a game, he's playing well. So right now, the coach and the player, even though their styles don't fit, are pretty happy with each other. We're also going to go to the morale screen. Overall team morale, we're winning. We're 3-0-0. Not everybody's completely in sync yet, so we're only at a 67%. But everybody very high. Batik loves McDonough, no reason not to. There is some compatibility there, not as much as with other players. But that is a good thing, of course, that's a very good thing that's happening. Let's see. Patrick Maroon, same thing. For the most part, fits in with the coach, not completely. Derek Brassard, very much a coaching favorite, as you can see here. We can go down the line to see how they fit in with the coach. Or what we can do is we can just go to the coaching staff. This is a new thing this year, which, of course, right now the overall morale for the staff is very happy. 82% chemistry there. My coaches aren't the best, especially my goalie coaches. You see, Petit isn't really a teacher, but he has some great schemes. He's a good overall coach. And this is why he's great for an expansion franchise, because he's a guy who can come in with a lot of veterans, a lot of veteran presence. So he's not great for Kako, but for everybody else who's had a lot of experience in the NHL, he can kind of get them on board. You can see what players best jive with his scheme overall. Fortunately, his record is 0-0, which doesn't make any sense because we're actually 3-0-0 at this point. And I'm looking at his stuff. You see here the players he doesn't. Mikoshin and Spezza are the guys who he doesn't jive with the most. Dickinson, who he just added to the lineup because of an injury to fibula. He actually drives very, very well. So it's kind of interesting to see who's doing well with him, who's not. And if I wanted to change things, I could very easily change things. I might get rid of Nordquist because he's a D- goalie coach. But again, the season's already started. He's also one of the cheapest coaches out there. That's a really big deal. But you see, there's a lot of other coaches out there who are focused on veterans and forwards and defensemen. There's honestly not a lot of great goalie coaches out there in general, unfortunately, I find. And I think that's just true in life. We looked at Nordquist. We looked also at Radulov. Both our goalie coaches at both levels are not good, but they're very, very cheap. They're cheaper. You could look around and you see here all the different coaches. You go down here you can go by level of coach if you want. And you see here we finally get into goalies, and there's a guy Savatos, but he's 3 times as much as what Nordquist is. He's a better coach, but is it worth the money? I don't know. Especially because we don't have any rookie goalies on the team, so I don't know if we really need to worry about it. But so this has been an overview of NHL 20's expansion franchise mode. You see some new things. You see some old things. Some of it's good. Some of it still needs some work. I really am not happy about the trade stuff. It's still a fun mode if this is what you're about. I like the minutia of the coaches and the compatibility with coaches and players. I think that's a good idea. I don't know if it goes far enough. I think it's a lot it's a lot of weeds that you have to kind of sift through when you're looking at it. So there is that, but this has been Geeks Who Love Sports and We Live Hockey special presentation on NHL 20. Stay tuned, as we got a lot more videos coming down the way. Thanks for watching, everybody.